Hey everybody, welcome back to Disturbing Creations, and today we're going to be performing brake maintenance on our Audi. So we're going to go ahead and jack the car up, take the tire off, check out the brake pads and rotors, and see what work we need to do. So let's get right on it. So I would advise getting some kind of breaker bar if you're not doing this with a gun, so that you can get in here and crack these loose. Then once I crack them loose, I just stick the socket in there and turn them real quick so I can get them out. Now these on the Audi are a little different than your normal lug nut. And what this is this is the stud and the nut all together. Now don't worry about the hole in there. Some have a hole and some don't, but it doesn't matter. Most of these German cars are 17s. Your Porsche is a 19, but most BMW, Volkswagen, and Audi is all 17, gonna use this same nut. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of them off. You see there's 5 there. We're gonna pull the tire off, and then we're gonna visually inspect the brakes before we do any work. Okay, so once we got the tire off, I always put the studs back in, whether the studs go in or you're working on like an American car, and I just put the lug nuts back on the stud. That way I always have them. And looking here, there's no lip on the rotor, so there's not much wear. This just, the car has been sitting for so long outside our shop. We tore the motor out for another job, and it's just surface rust. There's a lot of brake pad here, and look how big these rotors are. These are like performance rotors. You know, they're dual piston. So we're gonna take these off and use them on another Audi, or maybe we might be able to convert these onto one of our Porsche projects, but we'll just have to see. I digress. So let's get this caliper off first. Once we get the caliper off, I'll show you how you can change your brake pads and change this rotor. So these are some huge calipers. And I took the one off the other side complete because here, where the sliders are, the bolt is on this side. So I can't get in there to release this to come off. I had to get the 16 here and the one on the bottom, or the 18 here and the one on the bottom, and take the complete kit off. If you want to do anything or get the rotor off, you have to take the complete caliper off. But on this side, I'm going to show you quickly first just how to change the pad. So you see these 2 pieces are stuck inside here. I pulled this one out with a pick, and it goes in that little hole just like this one's in the little hole. And I'm going to pull that out with a pick real quick and show you how that works. So I just got a pick, and I just went in there and I pulled it away like this and released it down. And then when I do that, this whole thing comes open like this. And then you can pull these pads out after you play around with them for a little bit. You should be able to pull these pads out and get to it. Now this is the ABS with the pad on it. You gotta be easy around this one that you don't mess it up. And then you got 2 pads down here as well that we have to mess with. So because the Audi brakes are different, you're gonna have to open this up and leave it open here, because you're gonna have to push the caliper back, and it's going to push fluid back up into this. If you keep this all the way on and sealed, then all you're doing is building up pressure, and you could break a seal in your master cylinder. So make sure that you open the master cylinder. Then what you're gonna do is, when you come over to the piece here, so the brake was in here, I just took like a something to spread, and I got in between, and I just kept pushing it back. So I'm pushing the rotor up this way against the caliper, and I just kept pushing it back till finally it started to leak some fluid. So mine's disconnected on the bottom. If yours is not disconnected and you're just checking the pads, you have to do the cap piece on top over there to release pressure. You don't have to do the cap if you open the wire here, I mean the tube here. So I already took the line off, but you don't need to unless you need to change this as well. So spread as hard as you can, and then start playing with these to get them out. So as you can see, there's a pin here, and what we're doing is we're trying to spread enough to drop this pad out without having to change everything. Just like that. So you see the nipple on here that holds it in place, and then when you get the new one, you're gonna put it in here and get it up to where it is, pop it in place, and put it up in there, you know. Or you could pull them out from the front and slide them down into the front now if you have enough room to get them down in there like that. I guess that's what this is for when you hold the gate. So if you just want to what's called pad slap, you can throw the pads in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you have the right pad. Each pad that you take out, I will put the new pad in. That way you match this up to the next one, because I don't know if they're right and left. And this one has an ABS sensor on it, so we have to be careful with that. Now, once you push the rotor all the way in like this, to get these two of the front out, you're gonna have to pull the rotor back out a little bit, you know, to pop this one out of this, you know, and then just kind of finagle around. You see it's already loose, and there it came right out. So these pads kind of look close, but you see this one has a slice in it. So this one is for the ABS sensor, this one is not. So even though they kind of look the same, they're not. You see this one is rounded on the edge, and this one is pointed on the edge. So make sure you get the right brake pad in with the right side, you know? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. Now you know how to, if you wanna just pad slap to get the pads out, but now I'm gonna show you how to get the caliper off itself so that you can change out the rotors as well. So the next step is to take the caliper off. Let's worry about this ABS line. So the ABS line has a little hook right here. Sorry, it has a little hook right here, but you can leave it hooked in. It's just kind of hanging here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to pull the sensor off, and this is for the car, and that just stays with the car there. You could pop this out in the back, just kind of go easy back and forth. It's rubber, and then this whole piece will pop out. So this will still be bolted onto your car. I unbolted mine because it was broke on this side, so I just cut it and took this out. But yours will still be connected, so it'll be hanging up like this, like a wire. So you just disconnect it and let it hang there, or tuck it around. Once you do that, then this piece of the harness and this bracket will stay with the caliper. Now, if you're taking the caliper completely off and swapping it, you have to disconnect the hose from the brake line here. So you gotta disconnect the brake line and then pull the line down and let this line go with the caliper, or you can do it from inside down here, but it's hard to get to down there. So I like to do this side because it's easier to get from the car, and then just pull it down, then that'll go with the caliper. Now remember, if you break the caliper open, you have to bleed the brakes. But if you're just taking the caliper off and you're gonna hang it here to change the rotor, then do not open this, because you'll still maintain pressure through the caliper. Anytime you open and fluid comes out, that means air went in, and you have to do a brake bleed. Again, if you're just changing the pads in this round thing, the rotor, you just need to disconnect the cable, let the cable hang here, disconnect, keep everything else connected, and then we're gonna go down here and get this 18, and then there's an 18 here on the bottom, and we're gonna take those two out. We're gonna lift the caliper up, but hold on to it or hang it here, and then you can pull the rotor This piece is the rotor. You'll be able to pull the rotor off, put the rotor back on, grab the caliper, re-put it back on, put the 218 bolts in, and then put the pads on, just how I showed you how I took them off. But let's go ahead and get these 2 bolts out because I want to show you. I actually got them out with a gun, but if you don't have a gun, you can get them out with an 18, and I would use whatever longer breaker bar you can to help you break the bolts. All right, so we got our handy dandy gun out here, and I'm gonna take the top one off with the gun, and I'm gonna take the bottom one off by hand in case you don't have a gun. Again, I said it's an 18, and we have to get an extension to get past some of this stuff because this caliper is so big. But let's go ahead and rip this top bolt off. So if you notice, I turned the tire this way so I can get my gun inside there. See more of what I'm doing. And there she is. And there's the 18. Came out pretty easy. Some of them come out easier than others, but just what it is. Make sure you always put this down to torque, and you don't have to put, I mean, you could put Loctite on here, but their brakes, they get really hot, so it could burn the Loctite up. If you change your brakes a lot, I would change these bolts every couple of changes because the threads might start to get a little worn out, you know? But let's get in the bottom and get that other one off. One is an 18 as well. Gotta find where it's at. Okay, so I have a nice big breaker bar on here. It's about 2.5 feet. Or 30 inches. We have our 18 and our extension on there as well. And now remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey, but when it's facing opposite, it's backwards. So if I was putting a bolt in this way, it's righty tighty, but when you're facing the other way, it's almost righty loosey, you know, because you have to be looking from this side. So we're gonna lift up. And there it is. I heard it crack. Now this is a breaker bar, so it doesn't ratchet. So we're gonna give it one good more turn on here. And it feels like I can almost take it out by hand. Or now you could swap to your ratchet and take it off. But you see the caliper head just moved. So I'm gonna put this back on, try to take it off by hand here. And then just hold the caliper in place. So while I take this bolt out and get this caliper out, then I'm gonna set it over on the desk and we can take a look at it. So I got that bottom bolt out, and you can see, I wanna show you on the caliper where the 2 bolts are. So you see these 2 main big holes, there's one here with threads in it and one here. Those are the 2 bolts where this goes through. And then I'm gonna show you on the other side, the 2 tabs here. Let's get them around a little bit better. Okay, so this is tab number 1. The bolt goes through here and locks onto the caliper. And this down here by the ball joint right here is number 2. So there it is, 1 and 2. After you got the caliper released, you can release the rotor. Now some of your rotors will have this little divot. They'll have a screw in here. I absolutely hate those screws, but on these German cars where the lug nut and the stud goes in, nothing holds the rotor on, so you have to put the screw in. I normally, when I'm putting these on, will put the screw in, lock the rotor on, put everything back together, and then right before I put the tire on, I will take this little screw out, and then because everything is now locked in place. The reason I don't leave the screw in is because that screw is just from the factory to set this straight so it won't wobble like this without one, and then you can send it down the assembly line and they'll keep working on it. But a lot of times that screw gets rusted and then you have to drill it out, and it's a pain in the ass and it just takes forever. If you don't do your brakes, you have to take it to a dealership, then they have to drill it out. It's just a hassle. You don't want to damage anything, so just use it temporarily. So let's go ahead and get this rotor off so we can see what it looks like without the rotor. So I always put the wheel nuts back in so that the rotor doesn't fall off, you see? And I know where the wheel nuts are. So I'm gonna take these wheel nuts off, this rotor off, and show you what it looks like behind. So here's the rotor on the ground, and there's the back of it, and you can see it's just tapered a little bit where it goes on the lip here. Then your lug nuts actually go through the rotor and then attach here to the wheel spindle. Now there's a wheel bearing inside here that makes your wheel actually spin. And in this one, there's splines inside here as well, because you will have an axle sticking out just a little bit right here with a nut on it. Now you don't have to do anything with that axle or that nut to replace your brakes. I just took mine out because we took the transmission and some parts out of this car to save for our project car. So don't get scared that mine is empty, it's got a hole here, and yours has a little protrude coming out, like a little, yours will have a little thing sticking out here with a nut on it, you know? Now, sometimes you can keep the same rotor, and you have to measure from here to here, usually with some kind of digital caliper. If your rotor is in spec, you can keep it and put new pads on, but if it's too small, then it'll heat up too much or it'll wear too thin, and it could cause severe damage, or your brake not to work or lock correctly. Your brake could lock up. So usually when I change the pads, and someone has like a lip here where it looks like the rotor has been worn down on this side, even though it's nice and shiny, but there's a lip that protrudes out. Usually, rule of thumb, if it has a lip out, then you change it. This one's completely flat. I feel like they changed the rotors last time. They look great. I have to do a digital caliper and see how thick they are, but I'm gonna go ahead and save these and the calipers and pads for another project. Now, once you get the new parts, all you're gonna do is watch this video again and go backwards. So you're just gonna lift the rotor up. It's extremely heavy. You're gonna set it on here. You're gonna put the little pin in if you have it. If you don't have it, it's gonna be a mess trying to line up all these circles. So put the rotor back on, put the caliper back on. If you had to take the caliper off to get the rotor off, and once you put the caliper on, I showed you how to get the pads off. So you're just gonna put the pads back in, and then you're gonna check your brake fluid and top it off if you need to. So hopefully this helps you to save some money and build your confidence. You can do your brakes. You don't have to wait to take your car into a shop. You can just go buy the parts and do the brake job yourself and get right back on the road. One rule of thumb is whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. So if you're doing front brake on the driver's side, you have to do front brake on the passenger side. You can't just do one. It throws the car out of whack. One side's thicker, one side's thinner. It doesn't grip the same. So please always do that. If you change the front, you don't have to necessarily change the back. If you change the back, you don't necessarily have to change the front. But if you do change one of the front, you have to change the other one. So hook us up with the thumbs up, like, subscribe. I've got all kinds of Audi playlist coming out. I hope to help you guys with your Audi. And this is just another big playlist project that we have in our shop. So have a great day, guys.